Kasparov was now guaranteed his semi-final matchup with Kramnik.
Tomorrow, it's a real final tomorrow for you.
Yeah, for me, that's why I came to Paris. Yeah, it's a day of judgment.
This match was the crunch. It was now clear that it would decide the outcome of the whole Grand Prix. Not only were Kasparov and Kramnik playing for a place in the final and a chance to win the $30,000 Paris prize, but the $50,000 Grand Prix bonus as well. The young Russian, who had already proved his strength in these shootouts and was clearly confident that he could take out the world champion again. When Kasparov lost the toss and found himself playing with the white pieces in the 6v5 shootout, he knew that nothing but a clear-cut win would gain him the revenge that he so desperately craved against Kramnik.
Must win. And he's repeated the Slav defence again. Whipping out the moves. Kasparov's exactly the same opening. Now, who's going to come up with the first improvement?
Queen E2.
Queen E2 is the new move. Knight E5. He's captured on G6. That knight has gone on E5. There we go. Nigel, is this still hot theory? Do you remember this from your preparations?
I've forgotten everything.
Oh no! Come on, I want a bit of insight.
Amnesia.
Rook coming to D1. Queen out to A5. Kasparov the first to pause here. His time ticking down. One blitz game to decide it all. Who goes through to the final? Kasparov 5-10. His time ticking down. Kramnik 4:53. So the time's evening up now. Kasparov glancing across, shaking his head already.
Perhaps Kramnik intends to swing his queen over to H5. Who knows? The idea of
He's played the pawn to H3. So he's offering the pawn on C3. I'm sure he won't be taken. No, the queen will be trapped very quickly.
Rook into the center.
Oh, he's learned his lesson. It's gone to D8 straight away this time. So what's the big idea behind H3?
He doesn't want to get back rank mated.
Well, it's true, but it's rather long term, isn't it? Rook coming to D8. The Slav, such a solid opening. I mean, I'm amazed that Kasparov actually went in, and look at him, shaking his head. He's not happy, and his time ticking down. He's now got less time than Kramnik. 4 minutes, 10 seconds. Let's play the bishop out to D2. Now what? Knight to D5, knight to B6.
Rook E8 can be considered.
He's played E5 straight away. Breaking open the center.
Well, Black is very comfortable here, in my opinion. Very comfortable game.
Kramnik, he's so calm under pressure. Kasparov really not looking happy.
He's got the onus of having to win this game.
Bishop dropping back to E1. Kramnik captures on D4. Kasparov recaptures with the rook. I mean, one always speaks about the advantage of the two bishops, but
the bishop on E1 is not doing too much.
Indeed.
And one thing which we perhaps haven't mentioned in the Slav here is that this square on B4 is a weakness, and it's well occupied now by Kramnik's bishop.
That's a strong move. The knight coming to B6, so Kramnik threatening to trade that really important bishop off as well as exchanging rooks. So that looks very strong indeed. Kasparov, I think he must trade rooks here and then move the bishop back if he's going to get anything. But that looks very comfortable indeed for black. No, he's dropped the bishop back straight away, which allows Kramnik to isolate the E pawn. This looks fine for black.
Of course it is.
Rook E8, Queen D3.
Threatening queen takes
Queen G6. Knight blockading. Beautiful blockade of pawn on d4. d5 knight very strong in the center of the board. This is really very comfortable for black. Kramnik's got to be happy with this. And look at the times. Kasparov, just over 3 minutes. Kramnik's 3.5 minutes.
How is it a5?
He's played it.
Oh dear. That's unpleasant.
That's a very nasty move.
It is.
So, if bishop a5, then knight takes d5. And if the queen goes back to, well, c7, then I think there's a knight takes d5.
That's right. And if queen d8, knight takes d5 anyway, will win some material.
Oh, that's nasty. Kasparov's found something.
So queen b6 was a
mistake. Now, knight takes d5. If black plays knight takes d5, then bishop takes d5. Bishop takes d2, bishop f7 check. Basically, it's going to wind up, I think, with white winning a pawn. There we go, knight takes d5.
Yes.
And now bishop takes d5. He can also play bishop takes and queen takes g6.
Oh, maybe even stronger.
He's played it. And now
Even stronger.
Now queen takes g6. Kasparov has won a pawn. Queen can't be taken because of the bishop. Knight comes back. And now the queen, probably g5, f5, simple retreat. There we go, queen to f5.
Kasparov looking good.
Kramnik just played g6 there. Queen coming to d6 to defend the knight on d5. Kasparov is a clear pawn up, but his time ticking down. a6, it's a good move. He's trying to create weaknesses on the queen side. Playing g3, it's a safe move. It's good. Rook c1, pressurizing the pawn down on c6. Rook e7. Kasparov in control here.
h4.
King g2. Now, queen takes d4 is threatened. And also the pawn on a6. 2 pawns threatened. Kasparov moving the queen across. Moves back from g8. There was a threat to push the pawn to d5. But what's he going to do about the pawn on a6? Moves the rook to e1. Wants to trade pieces.
Oh, he's got exploiting the weakness on f7.
That bishop on b3, bearing down on the pawn on f7. King comes across to f8 to cover. Now, what happens on knight takes a6? What's this?
Queen c4.
Queen c4. Threatens mate and the knight. Queen d5. So, Kasparov still a pawn up here, but tricky technically to win this.
Well, perhaps not, because he's going to get an outside pass pawn on the king's side.
But he's only has a minute and a half left, and Kramnik 2 minutes 10. So Kasparov is time ticking down. That knight, a very tricky piece. This is not easy to win with such limited time.
F4 is threatened.
F4 is a big threat now. Had to play it. Knight dropping back. Now the knight can blockade in d6. That's very healthy. I think Kramnik's position has improved. That knight's looking good on d6, just blockading. And now king to f6. And his knight coming to e4 to attack the pawn. Kramnik fighting hard. Pawn on d5 is threatened.
What is this?
Knight check. Knight to d7 check. Kasparov still has a strong position. That outside pawn on h4 looking good. But he's under a minute. He has very little time. So, level material now, but Kasparov still has an excellent position. The king centralized on d5. But Kramnik with definite drawing chances now. Knight coming to e4. I think Kramnik's going to do it.
He's trying to eliminate this pawn.
I think Kramnik's going to draw this.
I'm not sure.
Knight coming back to e4.
I'm not sure at all.
Knight d6 check. Now knight c4. Oh, now Kasparov, he's played brilliantly. He still has control, but he only has 40 seconds left to try and win this. Takes one pawn. But that b pawn is just going to steam down the board. Can Kramnik stop it? If Kramnik can sacrifice his knight for that pawn,
He can't. He's going
and
down.
the pawn going on.
He's going down.
It should be a win. But Kasparov running out of time. Only 30 seconds left. Can he checkmate? He's a queen up. It must be a win, but has so little time left. Kramnik defending bravely. But now the pawn's gone. No. Kasparov can win it. He has little time, but it's an easy win. Kasparov wins. Brilliant.
A wonderful performance from Kasparov, who was so determined to get it right here in Paris. But right at the death, if Kramnik hadn't blundered his knight so quickly, would the world champion have been able to checkmate with just the few seconds he had remaining? Who knows? The first game of the final was a taste of what might have happened if he had. Kasparov playing white, Nikolic with the black pieces.
He's obviously prepared against Nikolic's French defence, his favourite French defence, and he's played the knight to c3. Bishop b4, e5. Now, Nigel, you've played the French for many years, but you didn't venture it against Kasparov. Is this move the reason why you didn't? Queen g4.
It is one of the reasons why I didn't venture it. Kasparov had spent months and months and months preparing for this in the World Championship match, and so I didn't see any.
Ooh, this is really sharp.
This has been played
very sharp. White sacrifices a pawn. And if you notice, Black's king is on f8. This is a speciality of Nikolic's.
Didn't they had this already somewhere. What was this? This is a very recent game. Exactly this variation, yes.
Uh-huh. But this is a speciality of Nikolic's after Queen g4 a few moves ago to play King f8, defending the g pawn. So
Kasparov has sacrificed a pawn. He has a pretty dangerous initiative for this.
There's one idea, is to push the pawn all the way to h6 to weaken the dark squares around Black's king. And the other idea, of course, which is we can see on the telestrator, rook up to h4, attacking Black's queen. And Black's queen is actually very short of squares.
Knight takes e5 looks like the critical move.
Knight e5. This is very dangerous indeed. So Kasparov whipping out his moves. He's obviously prepared this in great detail. Pawn to h6. That's very dangerous. Weakening the dark squares around Black's king. Kasparov going for it right from the word go.
This is really why I didn't want to play this stuff in the World Championship.
Yeah.
A very dangerous initiative here. A lot of home preparation, and it's just so easy to walk into some problems. I don't know how is the position objectively, but
Kasparov loves the initiative.
He does.
Very good with it. So it's got to be a risky choice from Nikolic. They played earlier in the year in New York. They played in the semi-final then. And Kasparov, bundled him out. He won the match 2-0 with really very little difficulty. Now, what can Nikolic do here? It's a very, very uncomfortable move to have to meet h6. You can see that bishop being marked out by the telestrator there. The dark squared bishop. He's hoping to bring that piece into the game. He's advanced the h-pawn right up the board, so he's trying to chip away at the defences around Black's king, and then later on move the bishop in. But of course, Kasparov has sacrificed 2 pawns to get to this position. So a very double-edged situation. Okay, Nigel, Black to move. Oh, he's taken it.
This is a surprise.
Bishop takes h6 check. Black's king is open.
This move I find quite astonishing, in fact, because now if King E8, Bishop
G7,
Bishop G7 is winning on the spot.
Here, Nikolic is in big trouble. He's obviously walked into some home analysis that Kasparov had done for last year's World Championship match against Short. His king is in check. If it moves to E8, then Bishop G7 wins. The rook in the corner is attacked as well as the knight on E5, and if knight takes F3 check, G takes F3, and the rook is still attacked, and now the queen on E4 is also attacked. King G8 is therefore forced, but it's such an ugly move to make. The rook on H8 is now trapped in the corner, and Black's king is potentially in a mating net with that bishop on H6 just cutting it off. Kasparov's follow-up was really powerful. He played his rook to B1. Now that prevents Black from moving the bishop to D7 because the rook takes B7, and also prepares to move the rook up the board to B4 and possibly to swing it across to the king side into the attack. Nikolic attempted to plug a few holes in the king side with knight G6. Then came rook B4. Then knight takes F3 check. G takes F3. Queen had to move back to E5. Now you might think that Kasparov's king is in just as much trouble as Nikolic's, but in fact it can rest very safely on the F1 square. There's really nothing that Black can do to attack it. So Kasparov just continued with his offensive. F4. Now Queen C3 check, and the king came to F1. No danger at all there. Now there are threats, for instance, to play F5, just breaking open Black's position. So Nikolic felt forced to play F5 himself. Then came rook B3, Queen went back to F6, and now C4, trying to break through into Black's position. If Kasparov can break through, then it'll be decisive. That bishop on H6 is going to assist in any mating attack. It's really powerful, and Nikolic can't dislodge it. He attempted to get his bishop out by playing B6. So he gave up the pawn on D5. Then bishop B7. So now there's a pin by the bishop. If the pawn moves on D5, then the rook in the corner drops. Rook D3 came, so that now if bishop takes D5, then rook takes D5 is possible. Very simple, but very attractive win. Queen takes D5 check. Nikolic brought the rook over, which doesn't really help that much. And Kasparov played the rook to G1, just tying Black up even more, and of course getting out of the line of the bishop on B7. Nikolic played the pawn to B5. Well, I suppose he's perhaps trying to prevent a bishop getting to C4 eventually, but it's really an irrelevance. D takes E6 came. Rook takes E6. Now a winning move. Rook D8 check. King F7 is forced. And now rook D7 check. Of course, if the king moves backwards, then the bishop can just be taken. And even after Nikolic blocked with a rook, Kasparov just snapped off the bishop. Rook takes B7, and here Nikolic resigned. For if rook takes B7, then Queen D5 check, forks, king and rook. When the Grand Prix points were tossed up, Kasparov had overtaken Ivanchuk and Anand and was equal first with Vladimir Kramnik. The miracle had happened.
Vainqueur du premier Grand Prix Intel de Paris, Garry Kasparov, champion du monde!